Friends, if you are looking to watch the super intense, gripping, and absolutely unforgettable movie Whiplash, 2014, in English, then you are in the right place. Make sure to like this video to show your support. And if you are visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe because here we bring you detailed, exciting and in-depth reviews, stories, and behind-the-scenes facts about some of the greatest films ever made. Friends, in today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is none other than Whiplash, a film that is not just a story but an emotional roller coaster, a battle of ambition, obsession, and perfection. In this video, I am going to tell you everything you need to know about Whiplash, what this movie is, why it became so popular, and what makes it one of the most talked about films in modern cinema. We will explore all the interesting details like where you can watch this movie, whether it is available on any OTT platform or which satellite TV channel might be broadcasting it. I will also guide you on how to access this masterpiece so you can experience it in the best quality. Not just that, we will dive deep into the technical aspects of Whiplash, its powerful direction, stunning cinematography, tight editing, and the music that becomes the heartbeat of the entire story. I will also tell you about the brilliant pre-production process, how this film was carefully planned, where it was shot, how the filming progressed, and how the post-production process polished it into the sharp and intense movie that we see on screen today. We will also look at the budget of this film, and I will share with you how much this small but mighty movie earned at the box office, and why it was considered such a huge success. Friends, we will also talk about the story of Whiplash, which revolves around a young and passionate drummer, and his journey through extreme challenges to achieve greatness. I will give you a small but exciting review of the film's storyline, and why this film keeps you on the edge of your seat from beginning to end. Along with that, we will discuss the star cast, the lead actors, and their unforgettable performances. I will tell you which actor played which role, and how each character added life to this intense drama. Not only that, we will also talk about some surprising facts, behind-the-scenes stories, and small details that you may not have noticed while watching the film. We will cover everything from the fierce character dynamics to the actors' preparations and the effort that went into making each scene feel so real and powerful. So, I request you to stay with me till the very end of this video because I am going to bring you a complete breakdown of Whiplash, its story, its making, its actors, and its unforgettable impact. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. Let's start the video and dive into the intense world of Whiplash, where every beat could be your last chance at greatness. Let's dive even deeper into the wild, intense ride that is Whiplash, a movie that doesn't just tell you a story. It grabs you by the collar, pulls you in, and refuses to let go until you've felt every ounce of sweat, every drop of blood, and every nerve-shattering beat of the drum. This isn't your typical rise to glory story. No, Whiplash plays like an electrifying symphony of ambition, fear, obsession, and the painful cost of chasing perfection. From the very first frame to the final crash of the cymbals, the film's rhythm becomes the heartbeat of the entire narrative, pushing both the characters and the audience to the edge. It all kicks off in the dark halls of the prestigious Schaefer Conservatory, where young Andrew Neiman is pounding away on his drum kit, alone, driven, and laser-focused. You can almost hear his heartbeat sinking with the tapping of the sticks. Suddenly, the door creaks open, and in walks Terence Fletcher, a music instructor who's as much a legend as he is a nightmare. He's not your average teacher. He doesn't pat you on the back or ease you into greatness. No, Fletcher believes that the two most dangerous words in the English language are good job. And from this moment on, Andrew's life becomes a brutal tug-of-war with this man who sees potential, but only respects perfection. At first glance, the story appears to follow a straight line. Boy meets mentor, boy works hard, boy tries to prove himself. But Whiplash constantly shifts the emotional tempo, keeping you locked in a psychological duel, where the power balance keeps tipping back and forth. It's not just about Andrew's journey, it's about how Fletcher manipulates the rhythm of Andrew's life. One day, Fletcher lifts him up with the tiniest nod of approval, and the next he tears him to shreds in front of the band, hurling chairs, screaming, and humiliating him until Andrew is drowning in self-doubt. The movie's key turning points aren't massive plot twists, they're emotional bombs. There's the moment when Andrew, desperate to hold his position, practices until his hands bleed, literally taping his open wounds so he can keep going. There's the breakup with his girlfriend, Nicole, which isn't your typical teenage heartbreak. It's a cold, calculated decision because Andrew believes she'll hold him back from greatness. There's the accident, that jarring, chaotic moment when Andrew's obsession pushes him past all reasonable limits. Imagine this. He gets into a violent car crash, crawls out of the wreckage, blood dripping down his face, stumbles into the concert hall, sits down, and tries to play anyway. It's insane, it's reckless, it's raw passion burning out of control. What's so fascinating is how the movie constantly plays with our loyalty. One minute, we hate Fletcher for his brutal methods, and the next, we're not so sure. Maybe he's the only one who really understands what it takes to push someone to legendary status. Fletcher's methods are cruel, but his philosophy is simple. Greatness isn't born, it's forged in fire. He's not looking for good musicians. He's searching for the next Charlie Parker, the next icon. And if that means psychologically destroying someone along the way, so be it. The movie doesn't tell you whether he's right or wrong. It just throws you into the chaos and lets you feel it. The emotional weight builds to an explosive climax. After Andrew is humiliated and forced to walk away from music, he finds himself at a crossroads. He could choose an ordinary life, blend into the background, or he could step back into the arena for one last shot. And what happens? Fletcher lures him back for another performance, but in classic Fletcher style, it's a trap. He sets Andrew up to fail in front of a huge audience, thinking he's finally crushed him for good. But Andrew flips the script in one of the most electrifying finales ever put on screen. He doesn't crumble. He doesn't walk away. Instead, he unleashes the most insane pulse-pounding drum solo, taking full control of the stage, the music, and even Fletcher himself. The final scene is pure cinematic magic. Andrew pours every ounce of his soul into that performance, lost in the music, pushing past pain, exhaustion, and fear. And Fletcher? He stops conducting, steps back, and just watches, his face slowly transforming from anger to awe. The film doesn't need words to tell you what's happening. That one look they exchange says everything. It's a silent acknowledgement. Andrew has arrived. He's no longer the student. He's something else now, something dangerous, something brilliant. What's brilliant about Whiplash is that it never relies on tricks like nonlinear storytelling or complex timelines. It moves in a straight line, but the emotional complexity makes it feel layered, intense, and unpredictable. The story structure mirrors the tempo of a jazz performance, speeding up, slowing down, building tension, then exploding in controlled chaos. Every scene pulses with pressure. Every conversation feels like a battle, and every beat of the drum feels like it might be the one that breaks Andrew, or the one that makes him immortal. This is not just a movie about music. It's about obsession. It's about the price of greatness. It's about the razor-thin line between pushing someone to their potential and completely destroying them. And Whiplash never tells you where that line is. It just drums it into your soul, beat by brutal beat. Let's really dig into the thick, messy layers of the characters in Whiplash, because this movie doesn't just hand you characters. It throws you into their obsessions, their fears, their ugly sides, and their rare moments of triumph. These characters are like live wires, buzzing with energy, crackling with tension, and they never settle into simple labels like hero or villain. They are complicated, they are extreme, and they transform in ways that leave you both awestruck and uncomfortable. Let's start with Andrew Neiman, the heart and soul of this story. When we first meet him, Andrew seems like your typical quiet, hardworking student. He's talented, sure, but he's also nervous, eager to please, and still living under the weight of his own self-doubt. He doesn't walk into Schaefer Conservatory thinking he's a star. He walks in dreaming about the possibility of being great, of not being another anonymous face. But very quickly, you realize that Andrew is not just some nice kid who likes to play the drums. He is hungry. There's something burning inside him that refuses to be satisfied with good enough. And that hunger starts to eat away at everything else in his life. It's not a sudden change. It's a creeping obsession that grows scene by scene, until you see him throw away everything that doesn't feed his goal. Friends. Gone. Family? Drifted away. Girlfriend? Coldly pushed aside like a distraction. Andrew isn't just developing as a drummer. He's morphing into someone else, someone who can't settle for being ordinary. But what makes Andrew's arc so fascinating is that his transformation isn't about balance or wisdom or maturity. He doesn't slowly learn to juggle love and passion and life. No, his growth is a slow, brutal shedding of everything soft. He's stripping himself down to this raw, focused version of himself that lives and breathes for one thing: to be remembered. He doesn't want to be liked. He wants to be great. And that hunger takes him to dangerous places. Literally driving through a car crash to keep playing, bleeding through his bandages, rehearsing until his hands split open. He's not just chasing a dream, he's willing to destroy himself to catch it. And it's thrilling to watch because the movie doesn't slow down to tell you whether that's noble or tragic. It just makes you feel it. Then we have Terence Fletcher, a character so intense that he doesn't even need to raise his voice to make your stomach drop. Fletcher is a storm in human form. He's terrifying, but he's magnetic. Every time he steps into the room, the air changes. He's not just a teacher. He's a test, a challenge, an impossible mountain Andrew has to climb. What's wild about Fletcher is that he is not a man pretending to be something else. He tells you exactly who he is. He's there to push people to their breaking point, because he believes that's the only way to create true greatness. He's not interested in good musicians. He's searching for the next Charlie Parker, and he's convinced that the only way to find that rare genius is to grind everyone down until only the exceptional ones survive. But Fletcher isn't a one-note monster. Sure, he screams, he humiliates, he plays cruel mind games, but he also feels loss. There's that subtle, quiet scene where he talks about the death of one of his former students. And you see a flicker of something softer in him. For a brief moment, you wonder, does he care more than he lets on? But before you can answer that question, he's right back to crushing the next student. Fletcher doesn't have a redemption arc. He doesn't soften, he doesn't apologize. And that's what makes him so fascinating. He's consistent. He is who he is all the way to the end. You don't get neat answers with him. You just get the brutal truth of his philosophy. The worst thing you can say to someone is good job. The relationship between Andrew and Fletcher is where the real fireworks happen. It's not warm, it's not nurturing, it's a ferocious tug of war. It's a battle of wills where neither is willing to surrender. They drive each other to the edge and beyond. And what's thrilling is that neither of them knows when to stop. It's almost like they need each other to become who they are meant to be. Andrew craves Fletcher's approval, but more than that, he craves the chance to prove that he's the one who can't be broken. Fletcher pushes Andrew because he wants to see if he can create the next legend. Their bond is twisted and intense. It's not love, it's not hate, it's something far more dangerous, obsession meeting obsession. And what about the people orbiting around Andrew? His girlfriend Nicole is one of the most painful casualties of his transformation. She's kind, she's supportive, but Andrew coldly cuts her out of his life because she doesn't fit into his tunnel vision plan for success. He even predicts the failure of their relationship before it happens. And just like that, she's gone, not with a big fight but with a quiet phone call. Then there's Andrew's family, who never quite understand him. In that tense dinner scene, Andrew sits at the table with people who celebrate sports players while dismissing his music as a hobby. You can see the growing distance between Andrew and the world around him. He's not just isolated. He chooses to isolate himself. He's building a wall between him and everyone else, brick by brick, until only he and Fletcher remain on the battlefield. The beauty of the character development in Whiplash is that it refuses to play by the usual rules. Characters don't follow safe, predictable paths. Andrew doesn't become a better person. Fletcher doesn't become a more reasonable teacher. Their growth is not about becoming good. It's about becoming extraordinary, no matter the cost. And that's what makes the story so gripping. It's not about right or wrong. It's about how far someone is willing to go to leave their mark. By the end, you're not even sure if you should cheer or be horrified. Andrew's final performance is not a victory in the traditional sense. It's a declaration. It's Andrew's way of saying, "You cannot break me." Fletcher, watching in shock, slowly begins to smile, realizing that Andrew is finally the musician he was searching for all along. But at what price? Andrew is no longer the person he was. He's something else now, something sharper, more dangerous, more electric. And Fletcher knows it. The characters in Whiplash don't just develop, they detonate. They burn themselves down and rebuild themselves into something new. And you can't look away for a second because every scene feels like a high-stakes performance where one misstep could collapse everything. Their transformations don't lead to comfort. They lead to obsession, isolation, and a raw, unforgettable kind of greatness. Let's go even deeper because the performances in Whiplash aren't just about delivering lines or hitting emotional beats. They are full-on transformations that grip you, rattle you, and make you squirm in your seat. These performances don't play it safe. They don't comfort you. They drag you right into the messy, obsessive, adrenaline-fueled heart of this story and dare you to keep up. The energy is so raw, so immediate, that you forget you're watching a movie. It feels like you've accidentally wandered into a real rehearsal room where a storm is unfolding, and now you can't escape. Miles Teller as Andrew Neiman gives a performance that feels almost dangerous. It's not polished, it's not neat, it's not aiming for a safe, likable protagonist. Teller plays Andrew as a kid who slowly chips away at his own humanity in his quest for greatness. And the fascinating thing is how physically committed Teller is to the role. His hands don't just look tired, they look ruined. His body doesn't just look strained, it looks like it's about to collapse. His face doesn't just show stress, it screams it. You can see every ounce of frustration and desperation boiling just beneath the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. And Teller isn't faking those drumming sequences, he's in it. He's smashing the drums with this sweaty, chaotic precision, locked in a fight against the beat itself. When he pushes himself past the point of physical pain, you believe it, because Teller isn't just pretending to suffer. He's living it right in front of you. But what makes Teller's performance even more captivating is how quietly he peels back Andrew's layers. In the beginning, Andrew is this soft-spoken, eager kid, sitting in the shadow of his more athletic, more socially accepted family members, desperately wanting to prove that he matters. But as Fletcher's pressure builds, Teller shifts. The way he holds his jaw tighter, the way his eyes narrow with defiance, the way his body becomes stiff and coiled. It's like watching a steel rod forming inside him. Andrew slowly stops caring about anything that isn't the drums. He pushes Nicole away with such cold logic, like his feelings for her are just another math problem to solve. It's heartbreaking because Teller plays it so straight. He doesn't cry, he doesn't scream. He just lets go, as if love is something he can no longer afford to carry. And then there's J.K. Simmons, the engine of this entire movie. His performance as Terence Fletcher is so volcanic, so unpredictable, that it grabs your attention like nothing else. He doesn't just walk into scenes, he erupts into them. His presence alone sends waves of panic through the band. And Simmons knows exactly how to control that power. One moment, he's a quiet, almost supportive teacher, softly asking for tempo, gently nodding. And the next second, he's flipping over music stands, hurling chairs across the room, and unleashing rapid-fire insults so sharp you can feel them slice through the air. But the true genius of Simmons' performance isn't just in the volume of his rants, it's in the precision. He delivers each word, each glare, each deadly silence like a conductor leading a symphony of fear. He knows exactly when to pause, when to lean in, when to let his silence do the screaming. His performance is like a masterclass in controlled chaos. And what's even more fascinating is that Simmons never lets Fletcher become a cartoon villain. He never lets the character become a simple, one-note bully. There's depth there. There's this strange, almost warped sincerity behind Fletcher's brutal methods. Simmons plays him with such conviction that you almost start to buy into his logic. You start to think, maybe he's right. Maybe greatness does require pushing people past their breaking points. And that's the scariest part. Simmons sells the idea that Fletcher genuinely believes he's doing the right thing. When he talks about Charlie Parker, you can see the fire in his eyes. He's chasing perfection, and he'll destroy anything in his path to find it. When Teller and Simmons face off, it's like watching two forces of nature collide. Every rehearsal scene is a psychological boxing match. The room vibrates with tension. Teller plays Andrew like he's charging straight into the fire, refusing to give Fletcher the satisfaction of breaking him. Simmons plays Fletcher like he's daring Andrew to either collapse or explode. The back and forth between them is magnetic. You can't look away because every interaction feels like a trap, a challenge, a moment where either one of them might snap. And let's not overlook the quiet, crucial work of Paul Reiser as Andrew's father. He's not the center of the story, but his gentle, concerned presence provides a vital contrast to the storm brewing between Andrew and Fletcher. Reiser doesn't need big speeches or dramatic moments. His performance is soft, but there's a weight to it. You can see the sadness in his eyes as he realizes he's losing his son to this unforgiving obsession. He just wants Andrew to be happy, to be safe, but Andrew is speeding towards something far more dangerous, and Reiser's performance captures that helpless heartbreak perfectly. It's a quiet tragedy unfolding right alongside the loud, bloody pursuit of greatness. Melissa Benoist, even with limited screen time, leaves a strong mark as Nicole. Her performance is refreshingly natural, grounded, and painfully real. You can see how she's drawn to Andrew's passion, but also how quickly she realizes she can't compete with it. That breakup scene is so devastating because Benoist plays it without anger. She's not bitter. She's just stunned, quietly processing the fact that Andrew is willing to throw her away like she's just another obstacle. And that's what makes the scene so crushing. Her heartbreak feels completely human, and her performance lingers in the air long after she's gone. Even the background players, the other band members, the students shuffling nervously in their seats, help build this claustrophobic world where every mistake is a potential landmine. They may not have long monologues or big emotional arcs, but they bring the right energy, the right fear, the right exhaustion to make the entire environment feel real. You can see the sweat, the trembling hands, the desperate glances when Fletcher walks in. They don't need words. You can read the panic on their faces. Every single performance in Whiplash feeds the beast of this story. Nobody coasts. Nobody fades into the background. The actors bring a pulse to the film, a heartbeat that races faster and faster until it's pounding in your ears. They make the world feel alive, suffocating, and electric. They don't just act, they ignite. Let's peel back even more layers because Damien Chazelle's direction in Whiplash isn't just great. It's a high-wire act that somehow balances chaos and precision with the grace of a master conductor and the fury of a drummer on the edge of collapse. Chazelle doesn't just direct this movie. He drives it like a race car, slamming the pedal to the floor and steering with white-knuckled intensity. And what's thrilling is how dangerously close he keeps everything to spinning out of control. You can feel his hand in every frame, but not in a way that screams for attention. It's in the way he orchestrates the energy, the mood, the pacing like he's composing his own relentless jazz piece. The way Chazelle establishes the tone is nothing short of genius. From the very first scene, where we find Andrew practicing alone in that dimly lit, cavernous hallway, you know you're not watching a movie about someone who simply likes music. Chazelle crafts the environment to feel cold, almost surgical, where the only warmth comes from the soft, ominous glow reflecting off the brass of the drum kit. It's like the drums themselves are calling Andrew deeper into the abyss. And Chazelle's camera doesn't just introduce us to this world, it locks us inside it. He creates a suffocating space where the audience is forced to sit in the same chair as Andrew, to feel every ounce of pressure and every drop of sweat. This isn't the world of romanticized, Hollywood-style music montages. This is raw, bruising, and punishing, and Chazelle's direction sets that tone and never lets it go. His use of space is one of the most quietly brilliant choices in the film. The rehearsal rooms feel like tiny cages. There are no windows, no grand concert halls where you can breathe freely. It's all tight walls, harsh lighting, and oppressive silence that Fletcher shatters like a bomb whenever he enters. Chazelle builds this sensation that there is nowhere to hide. Even when Andrew is outside, crossing the street, sitting in the movie theater with Nicole, Chazelle still keeps the framing close, like Andrew's obsession is a weighted chain dragging behind him. There's no escape. And that's the trick Chazelle plays. He builds the entire film to feel like Andrew is always inside the drum, always trapped in that pulsing, beating cage. And let's talk about the pacing because Chazelle doesn't waste a single breath. The film flies like a bullet, but he knows exactly when to hit the brakes, when to hold a shot just a fraction longer to let the tension bleed out. The moments when Fletcher prowls silently through the rehearsal space? That's Chazelle slowing things down to crank up the dread, like the quiet before a thunderstorm. And then snap! The film jolts forward again, the edits cut like a whip, the tempo spikes, and you're right back in the cyclone. Chazelle doesn't just direct scenes, he directs beats. He controls the rhythm of the story the same way a drummer controls the pulse of a song. He paces the film like a living metronome, alternating between moments of precision and moments of sheer emotional freefall. When it comes to shot composition, Chazelle is on another level. He places his camera like he's building visual instruments. In the drumming sequences, he practically turns the drum kit into its own living, breathing character. He zooms in so close that you can see individual beads of sweat clinging to Andrew's eyebrows, see the blisters forming on his palms, see the spit flying off Fletcher's snarling mouth as he barks impossible commands. The crash of cymbals isn't just something you hear, it's something the camera slams into. The editing slices these shots together so tightly that you almost lose your grip on the rhythm. But that's the magic. You're supposed to feel off balance. You're supposed to feel like you're chasing the tempo, that the film itself is daring you to keep up. Chazelle's brilliance also shines in his restraint. He never overplays his hand. He doesn't flood the film with showy camera tricks or unnecessary style for style's sake. His shots are composed with surgical precision, but they're always serving the emotional state of the characters. When Andrew's world narrows to nothing but his own ambition, Chazelle traps him in extreme close-ups where the edges of the frame blur, where the only thing in focus is the brutal, repetitive motion of the sticks on the snare. And when Andrew starts to crack under the pressure, Chazelle lets the camera linger just long enough on his bloodied hands, his trembling fingers, as if the physical toll is becoming too heavy to ignore. And oh, the way Chazelle uses silence. He turns silence into a weapon. He knows that the absence of sound can sometimes be more deafening than the loudest crash of drums. The quiet pauses in Whiplash are suffocating, stretched to the breaking point where you can practically hear the characters' heartbeats hammering in their chests. In those moments, Chazelle doesn't need music, he doesn't need dialogue. He lets the tension coil so tightly that you're almost begging for someone to say something, do something, break the silence. And when Fletcher finally speaks or when the drums finally come slamming back, it's explosive because the silence made you wait for it, made you need it. One of the most masterful pieces of Chazelle's direction is the way he treats the final scene. That entire last performance is a cinematic marathon, a psychological duel where the camera whips around the stage, the tempo races dangerously fast, and Chazelle gives the audience absolutely no rest. He stretches out the final drum solo with an intensity that feels like the entire film has been sprinting toward this one moment. But instead of framing it like a clean, triumphant victory, Chazelle lets it play out like a breathless standoff between Andrew and Fletcher, two stubborn, obsessive forces pushing each other beyond all reason. Chazelle doesn't pull back, doesn't soften the moment, doesn't give you the comfort of a neat resolution. He holds you there, locked inside that spiraling, manic rhythm, until you're as dizzy, exhausted, and electrified as the characters themselves. What Chazelle achieves with Whiplash is a rare cinematic pulse. A film that feels alive, that breathes, that sweats, that bleeds. His direction is so immersive, so tightly controlled, that you don't watch the movie, you survive it. Every choice, every shot, every silence, every burst of drumming is part of this relentless symphony of obsession, pain, and desperate ambition. Chazelle doesn't just tell a story, he pounds it into your bones. Let's go even deeper into the electrifying world of Whiplash's cinematography, because what Sharwan Mayer crafts here isn't just a visual style. It's a full-body experience that grabs you by the collar and pulls you into the pressure cooker of Andrew's life. This isn't one of those films where the camera politely observes from a distance. Oh no, in Whiplash the camera is practically sweating alongside the characters. It's gasping for breath, it's vibrating with the pulse of the music, and it never, ever lets you off the hook. Mayer's choices make the visual language of the film as aggressive and relentless as the drumming itself. The way the camera moves is pure adrenaline. It's nimble, it's sharp, and it often feels like it's chasing the rhythm, struggling to keep up with the blistering speed of Andrew's hands. During the performance scenes, the camera doesn't just float or pan leisurely. It whips around, it snaps, it cuts like a drumstick slamming against a cymbal. It's as if the cinematography itself is caught in the same whirlwind as Andrew, desperately trying to capture every note, every beat, every flicker of his emotion before it races away. There are tracking shots that follow Andrew's quick movements with Reiser focus, dolly shots that slide in ominously as Fletcher approaches like a lion stalking its prey, and handheld shots that jitter and pulse when the tension spikes. The camera becomes this restless, breathing organism, always hunting for the next flash of pressure or pain. Lighting in Whiplash is like a character of its own, cold and unblinking, but sometimes it punches you right in the gut with bold contrast. Those practice rooms are bathed in this brutal, fluorescent glare that refuses to hide anything. It's as if the lighting is daring you to look away, but you can't. Every drop of sweat, every crack in the skin, every shake of Andrew's bleeding hands is spotlighted in perfect, painful clarity. It creates this clinical, almost surgical atmosphere where every flaw, every mistake is amplified under the harsh lights. And yet, when the film shifts to the stage performances, the lighting transforms into something more theatrical. Deep shadows, stark spotlights, dramatic pools of light that isolate Andrew in the vast emptiness of the stage. Suddenly, it's not just about exposure, it's about focus. The lights lock onto him like he's the only person in the universe, the only heartbeat that matters, and everything else fades into a shadowy void. The intensity in those moments is suffocating, and it's all driven by how the cinematography traps him in those harsh, high-contrast beams. The framing choices throughout the film are nothing short of brilliant psychological warfare. Andrew is constantly framed in ways that make him look trapped, boxed in, cornered. Doorways, narrow hallways, the tight, square rehearsal rooms, all of them visually squeeze him, like the walls are closing in as his obsession tightens its grip. Even when he's not actively drumming, the camera rarely gives him space. It clings to him, following his every twitch and tremble, as if he's under constant surveillance by his own ambition. Fletcher, meanwhile, often dominates his frames. When he enters a room, the camera positions him with deliberate power. He's usually shot from angles that make him appear larger, taller, more imposing, his figure filling the screen like a storm cloud about to burst. And when Fletcher bears down on Andrew, the space between them feels like it's collapsing, visually shrinking until Andrew is practically pinned against the edges of the frame. The color palette leans into earthy, muted tones, browns, grays, off-whites. But this isn't to create a dull world. Instead, it grounds everything in a raw, stripped-down reality where there are no vibrant distractions, no cinematic gloss to cushion the blow. The only time we see flashes of vivid color is in the blood, the brass of the cymbals, and the golden glow of the stage lights. These sudden bursts pop with shocking clarity against the otherwise restrained backdrop, making them impossible to ignore. The blood on the drumsticks isn't just a story detail. It's a visual alarm bell, a screaming red flag splattered right in the middle of the screen, daring you to keep watching as Andrew drives himself deeper into physical ruin. And then there are those visual set pieces that just slam into your memory. The rapid-fire editing during the practice montages creates a syncopated rhythm that's completely addicting. The tight close-ups of sticks hitting the drums, the fast cuts to foot pedals, the beads of sweat flying off Andrew's face. It's not just visual style, it's a heartbeat. The cinematography doesn't just capture drumming, it becomes drumming. Every frame hits like a cymbal crash, every edit slaps like a snare. Every sweat-soaked shot is a high-octane visual note in this feverish jazz solo that won't slow down for anything. And just when you think the film has settled into its visual groove, the cinematography yanks you into that brutal crash sequence. The camera spins, the color drains, the world blurs in this dizzying tumble of motion and panic. It's not just a car accident, it's a full-on visual assault that leaves you as shaken as Andrew is. And the final performance. Oh, the cinematography pulls out every trick here without ever feeling showy. The camera circles the drum kit like a shark, closing in, snapping tight, then pulling back to let us see Fletcher's realization that Andrew is taking control. The lighting blasts Andrew in golden brilliance while the rest of the stage fades into nothingness, and the cutting rhythm of the shots matches the furious pace of the solo. It's visual storytelling at its peak, where every light, every frame, every camera move is in perfect sync with the escalating battle between student and teacher. What Sharwan Mayer achieves with the cinematography in Whiplash is not just beautiful. It's visceral, it's thrilling, it's oppressive, and it's addictive. The camera doesn't sit quietly. It lunges, it crashes, it races, it sweats, it bleeds. It wraps you up in the obsessive energy of the story and refuses to let you step back. You don't watch Whiplash from a safe distance, you live inside it. The cinematography builds a world that is claustrophobic, intense, hypnotic, and always moving to the beat of Andrew's desperate drive for greatness. Let's really dive headfirst into the editing and pacing of Whiplash, because what Tom Cross does here is not just a technical exercise. It's a full-on rhythmic assault that becomes the invisible conductor of the entire film. The editing isn't just there to keep the story moving along. It's there to drive the story, to punch you in the chest with each cut, to whip you around corners like you're sitting on the cymbal that's about to shatter. It's editing that breathes, that pulses, that sweats right alongside Andrew, making you feel like you've strapped yourself to a metronome that's slowly ticking faster and faster, until it's about to explode. From the very beginning, the pacing makes it clear that you're not in for a leisurely ride. The film opens on a quiet shot of Andrew practicing, but within moments, the tempo starts building, and the editing wastes no time. There's no unnecessary backstory, no dragging exposition. The film is already sprinting before you've even caught your breath. The rhythm of the cuts is tight, focused, deliberate. Tom Cross knows exactly how to keep the scenes lean and propulsive, never lingering too long, never letting the air out of the balloon. The pacing feels like the snapping tension of a drumstick right before it breaks. But here's where it gets truly brilliant. The editing mirrors the mental state of Andrew. When he's calm, when he's unsure, the pacing breathes a little. There's room for longer shots, a bit more space between cuts, as if the film is hesitating with him. But as his obsession with perfection grows, the cuts get faster, the pacing tightens, the edits start to trip over each other like his thoughts racing in his head. When Andrew is practicing, it's not just a practice scene, it's a war zone of cuts. Quick flashes of his feet stomping the pedal, his bleeding hands gripping the sticks, the sweat flying off his face, the sticks snapping in half. These images come at you like rapid machine gun fire. And the editing makes you feel the grind, the pressure, the desperation. It's relentless. You don't get to sit back and watch. You're practically in the room, feeling the same exhausting pace. What's really wild is how the editing plays with your expectations of tempo. You'd think that after those blistering practice montages, the film would give you a rest, but no. When it slows down, the tension doesn't ease. In fact, the slower scenes often feel just as suffocating because the editing lets the silence hang there just a little too long. You're waiting for Fletcher to pounce, you're waiting for the next outburst, and Tom Cross knows exactly how to stretch those moments like a rubber band about to snap. Even the calm scenes throb with this underlying pulse, this nervous anticipation that the tempo could erupt again at any moment. The pacing is never truly calm. It just gives you brief illusions of peace before dragging you back into the storm. And then there's the way the film transitions. You never feel a drag between scenes because the cuts are so sharply timed. When Andrew is moving through his routine, waking up, getting on the bus, setting up his kit, the transitions are tight, sometimes even overlapping sound from the next scene, pushing the story forward like there's an invisible conductor speeding you through the measure. The editing builds this feeling that life is moving too fast for Andrew to catch his breath, that time is sprinting ahead of him, and he's forever racing to catch up. Even the scenes where he's on a date or walking with his father feel like the clock is ticking in the background, as if Andrew can't fully switch off the internal metronome that's ruling his life. Let's not forget the editing during the confrontations with Fletcher. Oh, this is where the pacing weaponizes the silence. Fletcher's mind games are stretched out with long, agonizing cuts where you're forced to sit in the discomfort. Cross lets the camera linger on Andrew's confusion, on Fletcher's deadpan expression, on the long silence before the next verbal assault. The pauses are almost too long, making you squirm in your seat. And just when you think you can breathe, the rhythm snaps back into rapid, sharp exchanges that hit like verbal cymbal crashes. The pacing here turns conversations into battlegrounds, where every cut feels like a thrown punch. And then comes that final performance. This is where the editing unleashes its full ferocity. The rhythm of the cuts matches the speed and intensity of Andrew's drumming perfectly. The camera cuts between his hands, the foot pedal, the cymbals, Fletcher's expression, the band, the audience. It's spinning around like you've been dropped in the middle of a drum solo, and you're clinging on for dear life. The cuts come so fast and so sharp that you start to lose your sense of time. It's just pure energy, pure movement. The editing becomes the music in these moments. Every cut is in sync with Andrew's tempo, and you realize the editing is doing something incredibly clever. It's not just showing you the performance, it's making you feel it. You can practically hear the cuts in your bones, like the film itself is drumming along with him. But the pacing isn't just fast for the sake of being fast. It knows exactly when to slow down, when to hover on Fletcher's shocked face as Andrew pushes forward, when to let a beat hang in silence before the next eruption. The editing builds that incredible push and pull rhythm, that constant battle between control and chaos, between Andrew's need to please and his final break for freedom. The way the film holds on Fletcher's final nod, the way it doesn't rush that last, perfect moment, it's a masterstroke. The pacing throughout the film has conditioned you to expect rapid motion, but in the end, it knows that sometimes the most powerful beat is the one you let ring out a little longer. In Whiplash, the editing isn't just the stitching of scenes, it's the lifeblood of the movie. It's the very thing that gives the story its pulse, its urgency, its breathtaking energy. The pacing drags you, shoves you, chases you, and sometimes leaves you dangling on a single beat, gasping for air. Tom Cross turns the editing into an instrument, and by the time the credits roll, you're not just watching a film about drumming. You've been drummed on, rattled, spun around, and completely wrung out by the sheer, merciless rhythm of the cuts. It's a relentless, brilliantly timed dance between story and tempo that leaves you utterly electrified. Let's go even deeper into the electrifying world of Whiplash as soundtrack and score, because this isn't just music floating nicely in the background. This is a living, breathing monster that dictates every step, every breath, every pulse of the film. From the first crack of the drumstick to the last earth-shaking solo, the soundtrack isn't some polite companion. It's a wild beast chasing Andrew down alleyways, roaring at him during practice, creeping into his dreams, and pounding in his ears even when there's nothing around him but silence. The music becomes a second skin, something he can't peel off, something he can't escape even if he tried. It's not just part of the movie, it's part of Andrew's identity. Let's talk about the intensity of how the music is used, because it's not there to make you feel cozy or relaxed. The jazz in this film isn't the smooth, cool jazz you might imagine playing in a quiet cafe. No, this is war jazz. This is fast, brutal, high-pressure jazz that feels like it's hurtling off the rails at 1,000 miles an hour. When you hear Whiplash and Caravan, these aren't just musical numbers, they're adrenaline bombs strapped to the story. These compositions aren't there to make Andrew look good, or to let him showcase his skills in a feel-good montage. No, these songs are monsters he has to tame, and the more he tries to master them, the more they seem to gnash their teeth at him. And the way the music is woven into the very fabric of the film is brilliant. You don't get neat little moments where the music politely fades in and out. The music bleeds into the editing, into the cinematography, into the dialogue. When Andrew's playing, the drums aren't just part of the soundtrack. They're in the rhythm of the cuts, in the pacing of the scene, in the blood pumping through his temples. The film gets louder and faster as he does, but it's not just volume. It's the way the music pulls you into his frantic headspace. You start to hear the world like Andrew does. Every tick, every clack, every breath sounds like the start of a beat. He can't switch it off. It's everywhere. And then, just when you're caught up in the storm of drum solos and jazz explosions, the film hits you with silence, real, heavy, crushing silence. And what's so genius is that the silence is sometimes more terrifying than the loudest drum roll. When Fletcher steps into the room and the music stops, you feel it in your bones. It's like the air gets sucked out. There's this horrifying emptiness where you know the next explosion is coming, but you don't know when. The silence isn't peaceful. It's Fletcher's loaded gun. The music and silence play this incredible tug-of-war, where you're either getting smacked in the face with sound or suffocated by the absence of it. And the way the film uses those pauses, it stretches them just long enough to make your skin crawl. You're hanging on a single beat, just waiting to get blasted by the next round of cymbals. The soundtrack also follows Andrew like a relentless shadow. Even outside of the rehearsal room, you can hear the faint echoes of drums in his life. It's in the rhythmic tapping of his foot, the nervous beating of his fingers on tabletops, the constant, almost obsessive connection to tempo. The music doesn't leave him when he steps off stage. It's stitched into the sound design of his day-to-day life. It's like the film is whispering, "You can't run from this." The soundtrack invades his conversations, his relationships, his failures, his dreams. It's his addiction and his prison all at once. And the sheer pressure in the way the music is performed on screen is overwhelming. These aren't clean, studio-perfect tracks where everyone is happily grooving along. The soundtrack practically bleeds, with drums that sound like they're on the verge of shattering, with horn sections that are pushed to their limits, with tempo changes that could knock you off your chair. The performances in the film feel like dangerous stunts, as if every musical piece is one wrong note away from total collapse. The music carries this raw, aggressive edge that makes it feel like you're not just listening to jazz. You're surviving it. Justin Hurwitz's score doesn't just flirt with tension, it marinates in it. There are these simmering, brooding moments in the quieter tracks where the jazz softens but never fully relaxes. There's always this tiny, gnawing undercurrent that things could spiral out of control at any moment. Even when the film lets you step back from the fast-paced rehearsal scenes, the music doesn't let you feel safe. It's there like a pulse under your skin, keeping the anxiety alive. It's like the soundtrack is whispering, "This isn't over. Keep moving." And that final performance. Oh, that final performance is where the music detonates. It's not just a song. It's a full-blown war between Andrew, Fletcher, the band, and every ounce of expectation that's been crushing Andrew's chest since the first scene. The pacing, the editing, the cinematography, all of it collides with the music in a way that feels almost physical. You can feel every beat like a punch to the ribs. The soundtrack doesn't just support this moment, it launches it into the stratosphere. The drums hammer so fast, so aggressively, that it feels like Andrew is literally drumming his way to freedom. Every note is a rebellion. Every tempo shift is a scream. The music here is a living, raging, heart-thumping declaration of war. The soundtrack of Whiplash doesn't gently guide you through the story. It drags you by the collar, shoves you through fire, and leaves you breathless. It's brutal, it's beautiful, it's wild, and it never, ever lets you go. It's a soundtrack that doesn't just support the story. It becomes the heartbeat of the film, the chain around Andrew's ankle, and the fire that drives him forward. It's as much a character as Fletcher or Andrew, and by the end, you're not just listening, you're completely consumed by its rhythm. Let's really dive deep into the rich, electrifying themes of Whiplash, because this film doesn't just touch on ideas, it wrestles with them, beats them against the drum kit, and forces you to sit uncomfortably in the middle of the storm, asking yourself impossible questions. This isn't a movie that casually suggests a message. It grabs you by the collar, shoves the message in your face, and dares you to look away. The most thunderous theme roaring through Whiplash is the sheer, relentless pursuit of greatness. This isn't about chasing a dream in a soft focus montage with motivational music playing in the background. No, this is about obsession, raw, dangerous obsession that devours everything in its path. Andrew isn't some wide-eyed kid trying to be a little better at drumming. He wants to be the best. He wants to be legendary. He doesn't want a good life, or a happy life, or even a balanced life. He wants to be a name people remember, the kind of name that echoes through jazz halls for generations. And the film doesn't politely ask you whether that's a healthy goal. It shoves you right into the meat grinder and says, "Watch what this costs." The movie brilliantly explores the razor-thin line between passion and self-destruction. It's not always easy to tell if Andrew is driven by pure love for music, or by an almost terrifying fear of being ordinary. He's willing to bleed, to break, to burn every relationship he has just to climb another rung on the ladder. And the film never slows down to warn him. It never waves a caution flag. It just keeps feeding the fire, turning up the heat, seeing if Andrew will either shatter or rise. And that's where the next powerhouse theme barrels in. The cost of greatness. This isn't a gentle, balanced tale of hard work leading to success. Whiplash demands a sacrifice. Every step forward for Andrew means leaving something behind. His social life, his girlfriend, his family dinners, even his mental stability. The film forces you to think about what greatness really costs. Is it worth it if you lose everything else? Is the sacrifice beautiful or horrifying? You watch Andrew slowly push everyone out of his life, because they're not aligned with his mission. It's like watching someone willingly walk into isolation with open arms, because the drums are the only company he needs. But Fletcher flips this entire dynamic on its head. Fletcher isn't just a tough teacher. He's a master manipulator, a psychological battering ram who believes that greatness must be dragged out of people with cruelty. He believes that soft praise kills potential. To him, the worst thing you can say is good job. Fletcher's methods are like throwing students into a storm and seeing who crawls out the other side. And what makes this theme hit so hard is that the film doesn't make it easy to label Fletcher as just a villain. Yes, he's brutal. Yes, he pushes people to dangerous extremes. But here's the uncomfortable twist: his method works on Andrew. That's the haunting part. Fletcher isn't the monster under the bed. He's the monster that Andrew needs. He becomes this twisted mentor figure who seems to ruin lives, but also births legends. The film throws you into this messy, provocative space where you start to wonder, is Fletcher the devil or the key to Andrew's success? Would Andrew have reached that final, explosive performance without Fletcher's brutal push? The film doesn't spoon-feed you an answer. It leaves you tangled in the question, spinning around in it long after the credits roll. Another theme that pulses like a heartbeat through Whiplash is the desperate hunger for approval. Andrew's not just chasing perfection. He's chasing Fletcher's approval like it's oxygen. It's like a deadly addiction. He needs that nod, that glance, that fleeting moment where Fletcher silently says, "You're good enough." The tragedy is that Fletcher dangles that approval like a carrot on a stick, always just out of reach. And Andrew can't stop chasing it. Even after betrayals, humiliation, physical collapse, Andrew still comes back for more. It's not just about drumming anymore. It's about earning that rare, impossible stamp of approval from a man who rarely gives it. The film also pulls you deep into the cold, isolating world of obsession. Andrew's journey is almost tragic in its loneliness. He cuts off every human connection that doesn't serve his pursuit of greatness. His girlfriend? Gone. His family? Pushed to the edges. Friendships? Irrelevant. He's carving out all the soft parts of his life to make room for this unforgiving obsession. And the film doesn't hold him back. It lets him drift further and further into this dark tunnel where it's just him, the drums, and the endless race against his own limitations. And failure. Oh, the way Whiplash treats failure is brutal but fascinating. Failure isn't the end. It's just another beat in the rhythm. Andrew fails spectacularly, repeatedly, sometimes in horrifying public ways. He's knocked down, humiliated, and shattered. But what the film seems to whisper is that the response to failure is what defines greatness. Fletcher doesn't care if Andrew fails. He wants to see if Andrew will crawl back, bloodied and broken, and hit harder. Failure isn't something to avoid, it's something to conquer. And what about legacy? That's the ghost haunting every scene. Andrew isn't just drumming for the next show. He's drumming to be remembered. He's drumming to matter. He wants his name carved next to the legends. And that hunger is so overpowering that he's willing to rip his own life apart to get there. Fletcher understands that hunger because he shares it. The two of them are locked in this silent, furious agreement. They'd both burn the world to achieve immortality. There's also something chilling about how the film questions whether greatness and happiness can exist in the same person. Can you be extraordinary and also live a full, joyful life? Or is greatness a lonely mountain? One you climb alone, shedding pieces of yourself as you go? Whiplash doesn't offer you the comfort of saying, "Of course you can have both." It seems to smirk and say, "Maybe you can't." And layered underneath all of this is the terrifying power of silence. Silence isn't peaceful in Whiplash. It's loud. It's charged. When Fletcher stops the band and just stares, when Andrew sits alone with his failure, when the world quiets down, it's never comforting. It's suffocating. It's the quiet before the explosion. The silence that presses on your chest and makes you beg for the music to start again, no matter how brutal it is. Whiplash isn't here to make you feel good about chasing your dreams. It's here to rip apart the polite, inspirational poster version of ambition and show you the raw, painful, and sometimes beautiful destruction that can come with true obsession. It's a ferocious exploration of how far someone will go, what they'll lose, and whether the final, perfect note is worth the cost of everything else. And what's so deliciously wicked about it is that the film lets you decide whether Andrew's final drum solo is a glorious triumph or a terrifying descent into madness. Or maybe, just maybe, it's both. Let's go even deeper because Whiplash truly is a masterclass in how you can achieve overwhelming visual impact without leaning on the crutch of big-budget CGI. It's almost like the film is quietly daring every action blockbuster to sit down and watch how visual intensity is really done. We're talking about a film where the most powerful effects are created not with computers, but with sheer human willpower and the almost surgical precision of filmmaking. Imagine that. The wow factor here isn't a giant robot stomping through New York, but a young man in a cramped room sweating, bleeding, and pushing himself to the brink of collapse over a single musical note. And yet, somehow, it feels just as thrilling, if not more. In most films, when you see blood spurt across the screen, it's a digital effect added in post-production. In Whiplash, the blood is real. Well, real enough to make you squirm. It doesn't look stylized or exaggerated. It looks raw, messy, and painfully human. The filmmakers knew that nothing hits harder than something that feels authentic, so instead of polishing things with computer-generated touch-ups, they put us right there in the grime of it. The drumsticks splinter, the cymbals shudder, the skin tears, and the camera doesn't look away. It dives in closer, capturing the jagged edges of reality, letting us sit uncomfortably in the moment. This isn't the kind of movie that hides behind sleek visual filters. It throws us into the fire and makes us feel the heat. And the camera movements, they are an entire universe of visual storytelling all on their own. The way the camera swings around the drum kit, how it cuts sharply to the tapping of a foot or the flicker of a metronome. It's like the camera becomes an extension of the music, riding the rhythm, accelerating with the tempo, and then crashing down with the cymbals. It's dizzying in the best way, and it feels completely alive. You're not just watching someone play drums, you are being pulled into the tornado of sound, sweat, and adrenaline, as if you're spinning right there on the stool alongside Andrew. These movements don't rely on digital effects, but they hit with such force that you'd think some kind of visual sorcery is at play. What's even more impressive is how Damien Chazelle uses these visuals to crank up the tension to almost unbearable levels. There are moments where the camera lingers on Andrew's exhausted face, his clenched jaw, his trembling arms, and that focus becomes its own kind of visual effect. The way the camera traps you in his claustrophobic space, the tight close-ups that leave no room to breathe, it creates this visual tension that no green screen could ever replicate. The editing stitches together shots with machine gun rapidity when the music demands it, but then slows down to a suffocating crawl when Andrew is left alone with his crushing self-doubt. The contrast creates a visual rhythm that keeps your pulse on a roller coaster ride, making even the silent moments throb with tension. And let's talk about the sweat. Oh, the glorious, relentless sweat. It drips from Andrew's face, it splashes off his arms, it soaks through his shirt until it feels like he's practically drowning in his own desperation. And it's not just there for visual texture. It's a storytelling device. The sweat becomes a symbol of his obsession, his sacrifice, his unwillingness to stop no matter what it costs him. The way the camera lovingly captures every glistening drop is almost like watching a high-stakes action sequence. It's riveting, it's intimate, and it's the kind of visual commitment that would be totally lost if it had been digitally added in later. The sound and visuals also collide in this beautiful harmony. The camera doesn't just follow the beat. It anticipates it, it reacts to it, it moves with it. It's almost as if the visuals are a dance partner to the soundtrack. Every snap of a drumstick, every crash of a cymbal, every tiny flicker of a conductor's hand is matched with visual intensity that feels choreographed, but never artificial. The energy feels like it's bubbling up right out of the screen, and you're strapped in for the ride whether you're ready or not. And the rehearsal spaces, themselves stripped of decoration, bare walls, scattered instruments, they become visually oppressive, almost like silent prisons. There's no digital magic painting these backdrops. The simplicity is what makes them terrifying. The camera locks you into these confined spaces where failure is just a misstep away, where Fletcher looms like a monster not because he's visually exaggerated, but because the lens traps you in his shadow. The most brutal battle in Whiplash is psychological, but it's fought on a visual battlefield that's just as gripping as any sci-fi warzone. Then there's that final performance, the Mount Everest of drumming sequences. The way the camera circles, dives, jumps between close-ups and wide shots. It builds a visual crescendo that's nothing short of electrifying. The strobing lights, the sweat cascading like rainfall, the cymbals vibrating in what feels like slow motion. It's all shot with such raw energy that it feels like the frame itself might explode. And it's all done without the need for digital cheats. This is pure, in-camera adrenaline, carefully choreographed to make you feel every second of that exhausting, exhilarating, punishing performance. And silence. Oh, the way Whiplash uses silence as a visual tool is nothing short of genius. There are moments where the absence of sound is paired with still, almost frozen visuals. The quiet becomes deafening. The stillness becomes unbearable. And you can feel the weight pressing down on Andrew's shoulders just as much as you felt the frenetic chaos moments earlier. Silence becomes a visual effect, a pause button on this frantic world. And when the music kicks back in, it feels like you've been yanked out of your chair and thrown right back into battle. So while Whiplash might not give you intergalactic dogfights or skyscraper-leveling explosions, what it offers is something even more thrilling. A visual experience so tightly woven into the story, the characters, and the music that it grabs you by the collar and refuses to let go. It proves that when you strip away all the digital smoke and mirrors, the most powerful visual effects are the ones that come straight from real human struggle, from the precision of a drumstick smashing against a snare, from the sweat-soaked commitment of a musician chasing greatness, and from the eyes of a young man who just refuses to stop. Let's talk about something you might not notice on your first watch, but is absolutely crucial to the pulse of Whiplash: the set design and locations. Now, Whiplash isn't the kind of film that parades you through glamorous cities, fancy penthouses, or exotic beaches. Nope, this movie lives in the quiet corners, in tight, sweaty rooms, in dimly lit hallways, in practice spaces that feel more like boxing rings than places of learning. And it's precisely this stripped-down, no-frills environment that makes the world of Whiplash feel so authentic, so intense, and so claustrophobically real. It's almost like the settings are active participants in Andrew's brutal journey to greatness, pressing in on him, refusing to give him space to breathe. Let's start with the practice rooms, the core battlefield of this story. These spaces are not grand stages or beautifully adorned studios. They are small, almost suffocating rooms with scuffed floors, battered chairs, worn-out music stands, and drum kits that look like they've been through several lifetimes of punishment. The walls are plain, the lighting is harsh, and there's no attempt to beautify the surroundings. It's all deliberate. These practice rooms feel like pressure cookers, designed to trap Andrew inside, crank up the heat and watch him boil. The tightness of the space amplifies the tension. There's nowhere to hide, nowhere to retreat. When Fletcher enters, the room shrinks even further, becoming a visual representation of Andrew's psychological torment. You can almost feel the walls leaning in, as if the space itself is conspiring to test him. Even the instruments themselves become part of the set design's storytelling power. These aren't shiny, untouched showroom pieces. The drum sets are bruised and bloodied. The cymbals show the wear of countless hours of relentless hammering. The sticks are chipped and broken. Every scratch and dent on these instruments tells a story. It's as if the props themselves are carrying the weight of all the sweat, pain, and ambition that has soaked into them over years of merciless practice. They feel alive, not because they're moving, but because you can sense the history carved into their surfaces. And let's not forget the concert halls and rehearsal spaces that the film drifts through. They're elegant, sure, but even they are not overly polished or pristine. There's a kind of intimidating grandeur to these locations, but they're always framed in a way that makes Andrew seem small, almost swallowed by the scale of the stage. The rows of empty chairs, the cold, distant lighting, the cavernous ceilings, they all work together to create this looming sense that Andrew is being measured, judged, and observed by forces much bigger than himself. The locations become more than just backdrops. They feel like silent spectators, watching, waiting, almost daring him to fail. Andrew's apartment, on the other hand, is a world of quiet frustration. The set design here is deliberately sparse. It's a basic, unremarkable space that reflects his single-minded focus. There are no posters celebrating a rich social life, no decorative touches that suggest a teenager enjoying the typical trappings of youth. It's almost like Andrew's home has already surrendered to his obsession. His drum kit dominates the space, and even when he's at home, he can't escape the pull of his relentless ambition. The design quietly screams that this isn't a kid with a balanced life. This is a kid consumed by his pursuit. Even the tiny details in the background tell stories. The crumpled sheet music, the silent metronome waiting to spring back into action, the discarded sticks piling up like casualties. These props aren't just set dressing, they're symbols. They track Andrew's descent, his sacrifices, his narrowing world where only one thing matters: getting it right, no matter the cost. Then there are the school hallways and streets of New York, and here's the thing: they aren't filmed to be iconic or postcard perfect. They're often quiet, empty, almost indifferent to Andrew's personal war. It's like the world outside is moving on, unaware of the life or death stakes he feels inside. The set design contrasts the grand emotional weight of Andrew's journey with the cold ordinariness of the city around him. The locations remind us that in the grand scheme of life, this might be just another practice room, another concert, another student. But for Andrew, this is everything. The blandness of the outside world makes the suffocating practice spaces feel even more like battle zones. Fletcher's presence transforms every location he enters. Whether it's a cramped classroom or a spacious concert hall, when Fletcher walks in, the space feels charged. The chairs seem to close in, the lighting sharpens, and even the air feels thicker. The set doesn't change, but our perception of it does, because the design has already set the stage for tension. It's as if Fletcher carries his own psychological weather system that rearranges the mood of every room. And let's talk about the contrast between Andrew's world and the dinner table scenes with his family. The design of his home is so deliberately ordinary: soft lighting, bland decor, typical middle-class setting. But that's the point. It's a world where mediocrity is acceptable, where small victories are good enough. And Andrew stands out here like a sore thumb. The set design subtly shows us that he doesn't belong in this space of quiet comfort. He belongs in the brutal, sweat-soaked trenches of his music rooms. His home feels like a foreign country where nobody speaks his language. Even the bar where Andrew meets his fleeting love interest is visually unremarkable, which is perfect because it isn't meant to be a romantic oasis. It's just another pit stop on his road to obsession. The lack of visual grandeur here mirrors how little attention Andrew ultimately gives to this part of his life. It's almost like the set design is whispering to us, this won't last. He's not really here. His heart is somewhere else, somewhere with blood-stained drumsticks and ticking metronomes. The beauty of the set design in Whiplash is that it's invisible in the best way. It never shouts for attention, but it quietly holds the entire film together, creating a world that feels brutally real and suffocatingly small. Every cracked cymbal, every silent hallway, every cramped practice room. It's all meticulously chosen to wrap the story in a cocoon of obsession, pressure, and claustrophobia. It's a world designed not to comfort, but to challenge, to confine, to crush. And in that, it becomes just as powerful as any grand, sweeping movie landscape. The dialogue and script of Whiplash hit harder than a drum solo at full blast. This isn't just about characters exchanging words. This is verbal combat, psychological warfare where every sentence carries the weight of ambition, rage, and desperation. Damien Chazelle's writing is razor-sharp, cutting deep into the characters' souls and dragging their raw emotions out into the open. The conversations in Whiplash don't just move the story forward. They ignite it, they burn through it, they make it pulse with electricity. You can feel the tension in every word like a wire pulled tight, always on the verge of snapping. Fletcher's dialogue is something else entirely. He doesn't talk, he detonates. His words aren't meant to comfort or encourage. They're bombs designed to blow up Andrew's comfort zone. The way he hurls insults, drills commands, and flips between chilling calm and explosive fury is terrifyingly magnetic. It's not just the words he says, it's the rhythm, the pauses, the cold delivery that makes each line hit like a brick. Fletcher's infamous "not my tempo" line is a perfect example. On paper, it seems simple, almost harmless. But the way he repeats it, with that razor's edge of control, with those beady eyes locked on Andrew, it becomes a taunt, a psychological needle threading straight into his student's soul. It's a phrase that becomes Fletcher's weapon, his mantra, and it's unforgettable. And it's not just the verbal explosions that make the script sing. It's the subtleties too. the awkwardness of Andrew trying to connect with Nicole, fumbling through small talk at the movie theater, stumbling over his words as he tries to balance a normal human connection with the roaring obsession inside him. The dialogue here is intentionally clumsy, because Andrew is clumsy at being anything other than a drummer. It's painfully real. The moment he coldly breaks up with Nicole is brutal not because he shouts or slams the table. It's brutal because it's so matter-of-fact, so robotic, like he's reading off a checklist. The script captures the horrifying cost of his obsession through the cold efficiency of that breakup conversation. But the absolute fireworks happen in the rehearsal rooms. The script crafts these scenes like verbal duels, and Fletcher always brings the heavy artillery. He doesn't just bark orders. He dissects people with words. He weaponizes language in ways that should probably be illegal. His tirades are laced with insults that are shockingly specific and cruel. Yet they're delivered with a terrifying sense of purpose. He's not randomly cruel, he's deliberately cruel. And the script lets you wrestle with the uncomfortable possibility that maybe, just maybe, his ruthless methods have a point. The pacing of the dialogue is like the pacing of a drum solo. Sometimes it's a rapid-fire blitz. Sometimes it holds an agonizing silence. Those pauses, those beats where Fletcher just stares, where Andrew's breathing fills the space, those are moments where the script is flexing without saying a word. The silence is scripted, and it screams just as loudly as the most vicious line. The power of the script is in how it makes you feel the weight of silence just as much as the sting of an insult. There are lines in this film that stick to your ribs long after the credits roll. Fletcher's cold declaration about the two most damaging words in the English language, "good job," is the kind of line that doesn't just define a character, it challenges the audience. It forces you to think about praise, about ambition, about whether we sometimes settle for less just to feel comfortable. It's a line that feels like it belongs in motivational speeches and psychological horror films at the same time. That's the beauty of this script. It plays in both worlds, sometimes within the same sentence. Andrew's own dialogue transforms throughout the film. He starts as the nervous, polite student, tiptoeing through conversations, and by the end, he's standing toe-to-toe with Fletcher in a silent war of wills. The words he chooses become sharper, more deliberate, more defiant. He starts the film asking for approval. He ends it commanding the stage without saying a word. The script tracks that transformation in the most satisfying, brutal way. Even in the small moments, the writing sparkles with authenticity. The awkward family dinner where Andrew's achievements are downplayed compared to his cousin's football trophies. Oh, that scene is dripping with passive-aggressive tension. The script nails the subtle jabs, the dismissive questions, the quiet belittling that so many artists face from people who just don't get it. The dialogue isn't flashy here. It's the quiet sting that cuts the deepest. The magic of the Whiplash script is that it isn't trying to be flowery or overly poetic. It's lean, it's direct, it's a punch in the gut. But hidden in that brutal efficiency are layers of emotional complexity, moral ambiguity, and existential dread. The words are chosen like notes in a perfect rhythm. Miss one, and the whole thing collapses. But this script never misses a beat. Every line is a brushstroke in a masterpiece that's painted with blood, sweat, and the relentless ticking of a metronome. Whiplash is one of those films that walks into the room wearing the label of a music drama. But the way it plays with genre feels like it's crashing a psychological thriller's party. This movie doesn't just follow the typical beats of a coming-of-age music story, where a young prodigy overcomes obstacles and reaches for greatness. No, Whiplash grabs the music genre by the collar, shoves it into a sweaty rehearsal room, and cranks the intensity up to levels usually reserved for war films and survival stories. You think you're getting a music school drama, but what you really get is a high-stakes pressure cooker where the drumsticks might as well be loaded weapons and every practice session feels like life or death. It's not about the joy of music, it's about the obsession, the sacrifice, and the brutal pursuit of something just out of reach. The genius of Whiplash is how it completely subverts what you expect from a music-centric film. There are no inspirational montages with cheerful instructors guiding students through personal growth. Instead, we get Fletcher, a conductor who makes drill sergeants look like kindergarten teachers. He's not here to gently coax brilliance out of his students. He's here to squeeze it out of them like juice from a lemon, even if he has to crush them in the process. The whole movie takes the mentor-student dynamic and flips it on its head, turning it into something primal, something ferocious. Fletcher isn't the gentle mentor. He's the villain you can't stop watching, and somehow, maybe, the twisted hero Andrew actually needs. There are no safety nets in this story. No comforting genre cliches where the hard work naturally pays off, and everyone holds hands in the final concert. Every rehearsal is a battlefield, and the victories feel earned through sweat, blood, and sheer willpower. This isn't a story where the protagonist learns to balance life and passion. This is a story where the protagonist burns life to the ground for passion, and the genre leans into that fire without ever pulling back. It takes the expected music drama and shoves it into thriller territory, not by adding car chases or shootouts, but by making every stare, every silence, every tap of the drumstick feel like a countdown to an explosion. The film introduces a fresh idea by framing the music world with the same cinematic language used in sports movies and psychological thrillers. The editing, the pacing, the sweat-drenched close-ups, the tension that hangs in the air like thick fog. It all feels like you're watching a game where someone's life is on the line. The genre's usual warmth and inspirational tone are swapped out for a cold, brutal realism that almost dares you to question whether the price of greatness is worth it. The movie doesn't stop to comfort you. It doesn't soften its blows with comic relief or easy emotional payoffs. Even when you think there might be a moment of breathing room, Fletcher storms back in with a tempo nobody can keep up with. And it's not just about subverting the genre. It's about committing to this fresh, cutthroat energy all the way through. Most films about passion show you the joy that comes with it, the friendships, the moments of self-discovery. Whiplash strips all that away and leaves behind the raw, ugly hunger to be the best. It doesn't shy away from the darkness of that obsession. It doesn't apologize for it. And it definitely doesn't give the audience the traditional feel-good ending wrapped up in a bow. It just keeps tightening the screws faster, harder, louder, until you're clenching your fists in your seat. Not because someone's being chased by a villain, but because someone's desperately trying to land the perfect beat. The film does something rare. It makes a genre that often leans into harmony feel like chaos, like war. It balances the technical beauty of jazz with the emotional brutality of its characters. There's no softening the edges here. It's sharp, it's violent, it's relentless, and it refuses to let the audience hide in the comfort zone of typical music dramas. It takes the genre, spins it on its head, and marches to its own terrifying tempo. Whiplash might not march into the room waving a political flag or hammering home a big social agenda, but oh, it is absolutely buzzing with cultural commentary. Quietly at first, then like a deafening drum solo you can't escape. Beneath the fierce drumming and brutal mentorship, the film takes a scalpel to some of the biggest cultural conversations about success, ambition, talent, and the terrifying line between dedication and self-destruction. It's a film that pokes hard at the myth of the American dream. The idea that if you just work hard enough, if you grind yourself down to the bone, greatness is waiting for you at the finish line. But Whiplash doesn't romanticize that journey. It shows you the price tag. It drags you through the sleepless nights, the bleeding hands, the broken relationships, and it asks, is this what it takes? Is this the cost of being remembered? The film throws you right into the heart of a toxic culture that worships success at all costs. Fletcher isn't just one crazy music instructor. He's the walking, yelling embodiment of a system that believes pushing people to the edge, breaking them down, and tearing away their humanity is how you uncover greatness. The idea that people can't reach their full potential without being brutalized, without being humiliated, that's the ugly cultural conversation Whiplash holds under a microscope. And it doesn't offer a neat answer. It leaves you sitting with that discomfort, wondering how many prodigies have been born out of cruelty, and whether that's something to admire or something to fear. The film also dives into the question of male ego and competition. It's a world where vulnerability is seen as weakness, where every interaction is a power play, where even a dinner conversation turns into a subtle war of one-upmanship. Andrew isn't just trying to be great. He's trying to prove he's better than the football star cousins, better than the other drummers, better than anyone who doubts him. And Fletcher knows exactly how to exploit that. The culture of masculinity in Whiplash isn't about brotherhood or mentorship. It's about domination, about who can push harder, who can suffer more, who can walk through fire without flinching. Even Andrew's breakup with Nicole is drenched in this cold, calculated logic, as if human connection is just another obstacle getting in the way of his grind. There's also a sharp commentary about gatekeeping in elite spaces. The jazz world in Whiplash is portrayed as fiercely guarded, almost cult-like. Fletcher stands at the gate, deciding who gets to pass through and who gets chewed up by the machine. The idea that greatness can only be defined by a select few, that approval from a singular authority figure is the only path to success, that's a dangerous power dynamic the film lays bare. It's a subtle but biting critique of how institutions, whether in music, sports, or academics, can trap people in this endless cycle of chasing validation from people who may never give it. The film also quietly touches on social class. Andrew comes from a modest background. His father is a schoolteacher, his family doesn't seem to understand the depth of his obsession, and that dinner table scene is like a crash course in how different social circles value different kinds of success. His cousins are celebrated for their visible achievements in sports, a familiar, popular route to admiration, while Andrew's dedication to jazz, something more niche and less understood, is brushed aside like a hobby. That social disconnect adds another layer to Andrew's obsession. He's not just playing for Fletcher's approval, he's playing to prove his worth to a world that doesn't seem to notice him. Whiplash doesn't handle these topics with preachy dialogue or big dramatic speeches. It weaves them into the story's DNA, lets them fester beneath the surface. The cultural commentary hits harder because it's baked into every beat of the drum, every glare from Fletcher, every drop of sweat flying off Andrew's face. The film forces the audience to reckon with uncomfortable truths about what society celebrates, who gets to succeed, and whether the sacrifices we glorify are actually noble or just quietly tragic. It's a film that lives in that gray space, where ambition is both thrilling and horrifying, where success is both a crown and a curse, and where cultural pressures don't come knocking, they come barging in with cymbals crashing. Whiplash doesn't just sit politely on the screen waiting for you to absorb it. It grabs you by the collar from the first beat, and doesn't let go. This is the kind of film that doesn't aim for a quiet emotional connection where you simply nod along and appreciate the story. No, Whiplash charges full speed at your nerves, your gut, your pulse. It's like a cinematic adrenaline shot. Every rehearsal feels like stepping into a boxing ring where the punches are flying and you can't look away. You're not a passive viewer. You're dragged into this sweaty, nerve-wracking world where you feel every blister, every missed beat, every explosion of rage like it's happening to you. There's this magnetic pull the film has that forces the audience to experience the same tunnel vision Andrew has. You find yourself clenching your fists, holding your breath, leaning in as if you're the one trying to keep tempo while Fletcher's eyes are boring into your soul. The emotional roller coaster this film delivers is something else entirely. It's not the sweet variety of emotions most dramas give you. It's sharp, unsettling, often uncomfortable. One second you're riding the high of Andrew nailing a complex solo, and the next, you're plummeting as Fletcher demolishes him with a few devastating words. The mood swings are wild, but they're thrilling. This isn't a film that just hopes you'll like it, it demands that you feel it. It doesn't settle for polite applause. It cranks the tension until you're sweating as much as Andrew is. And the moments that hit hardest often aren't the loudest. Sometimes it's Fletcher pausing mid-sentence, leaning in, whispering something so cutting that you can feel the air being sucked out of the room. Sometimes it's the silence after a mistake, that awful suspended second where everyone waits for the inevitable explosion. Those are the moments that stick to you like glue. And let's not ignore the final scene. The electrifying drum solo that feels like a full-on psychological battle. That sequence isn't just the climax of the film. It's an experience that leaves audiences buzzing, breathless, completely riveted. It's the kind of ending that sends people into stunned silence in theaters, that pushes viewers to instantly rewind and watch again just to process what they've seen. It sparks debates. Was it triumph? Was it tragedy? Did Andrew win? Or did he lose something far bigger? That finale invites endless interpretation, and audiences keep coming back to peel away its layers like a hypnotic puzzle. The film also sparks surprisingly intense discussions about ambition and mentorship. Viewers walk away asking themselves uncomfortable questions. How far is too far when chasing greatness? Is Fletcher a monster or a necessary evil? Would Andrew have become extraordinary without the abuse? These aren't surface-level topics. They dig into the bones of how we define success and how much we're willing to bleed for it. People don't just watch Whiplash and move on. They carry it with them. They talk about it. They argue about it. They revisit it to see if their answers have changed over time. And yes, despite its intense, cutthroat energy, Whiplash also has flashes of dark humor that catch audiences off guard. Fletcher's brutal one-liners, his bizarrely creative insults, the painfully awkward moments between Andrew and his father. They make you smirk even as you're gasping. The humor doesn't soften the blows, but it makes the ride even more exhilarating, because you never quite know where the next emotional twist is coming from. Whiplash is one of those rare films that plants itself in your chest and refuses to budge. It rattles you, challenges you, and leaves you either fist-pumping in triumph or sitting in stunned silence, unsure if you just watched a victory or a slow-motion collapse. It's a film that lingers in your mind, gnaws at your thoughts, and practically dares you to watch it again to see if you survive the next round. It doesn't just engage the audience, it completely consumes them. When you start stacking Whiplash against other films in the same sandbox, it immediately stands out like a cymbal crash in a library. Sure, we've seen plenty of films about the grind for greatness. Sports dramas where the underdog trains until the sun comes up, musical journeys where the prodigy finally earns their big moment, classic teacher-student stories where a tough mentor pushes their pupil toward glory. But Whiplash doesn't just walk into that genre. It charges in, flips the table, and rewrites the rulebook. Most music-centered films like Mr. Holland's opus, School of Rock, or even something as grand as Amadeus usually carry a kind of soaring emotional uplift, a celebration of art, passion, and the human spirit. There's struggle, but it often leads to a heartwarming finish line. Whiplash snatches that roadmap, shreds it, and asks, what if the journey to greatness is more horror film than feel-good story? What if the pursuit of excellence is a psychological battlefield where there are no hugs waiting at the end? In comparison to sports movies like Rocky, Creed, or Remember the Titans, Whiplash feels like the aggressive, no-safety-net cousin who doesn't wait for the crowd to cheer. Rocky had Mickey, who was tough but loved him. Andrew has Fletcher, who is a nightmare in a suit, a mentor who never blinks, never relents, and may not even care about Andrew's well-being. Sports films usually deliver emotional payoffs, where the hero wins not just the trophy but also respect, love, and a sense of self. Whiplash is more brutal. It's the version where winning might mean losing your soul in the process, where the victory lap feels suspiciously like a nervous breakdown. If you slide Whiplash next to other psychological dramas like Black Swan, you start to see its cinematic siblings. Both films dive into obsessive artists, physically and mentally unraveling in their quest for perfection. Both films make you question whether the protagonist is reaching glory or plummeting into self-destruction. Both flirt with madness as the price of brilliance. But where Black Swan leans into the surreal and dances in the shadowy corners of the mind, Whiplash stays raw, stripped down, and real. There are no hallucinations, no dreamy sequences, just sweat, pain, and an escalating tempo that never lets you breathe. Looking at Damien Chazelle's other work, La La Land feels like the smoother, more glamorous cousin of Whiplash. Both films explore the sacrifices artists make, but while La La Land dances through colorful streets and sings about dreams, Whiplash shoves you into a cold practice room and slams the door. Chazelle's signature rhythm and pacing are there in both films, but Whiplash is pure, unfiltered intensity without the sugar coating. It's fascinating to see how Chazelle can explore similar themes across his filmography, but hit entirely different emotional notes. Romantic yearning in one, raw obsession in the other. Even compared to big franchise films about mastery and mentorship, think The Karate Kid, Star Wars with Yoda and Luke, or even Kill Bill with Pai Mei, Whiplash feels like the dark inversion. In those stories, the mentor is tough but ultimately supportive, pushing the student toward greatness with a mix of discipline and belief. Fletcher? Fletcher is the horror version. He's the mentor you never want. His lessons aren't about balance, kindness, or unlocking hidden potential. They're about survival under impossible pressure. He doesn't want to see you fly. He wants to see if you'll crash and burn trying to earn his nod of approval. In the realm of films that explore perfection, obsession, and the price of success, Whiplash carves out a savage, unforgettable niche. It doesn't follow the usual rhythm. It pounds out its own relentless beat. Where other films offer inspirational arcs, Whiplash throws you headfirst into an emotional demolition derby and dares you to call it inspiring. It's not just a story about becoming great. It's about whether becoming great is even worth it. And that's what sets it apart from anything else in the genre. It's the film that doesn't hand you answers. It hands you a pair of drumsticks and asks, how far would you go? Whiplash is one of those films that's built like a symphony of cymbals, where almost every shot, every gesture, and every beat of the drum isn't just there to look cool. It's there to mean something bigger. It's like Damien Chazelle wrapped the whole film in a musical metaphor and handed it to the audience as a puzzle, daring them to crack it. Let's start with the drums themselves. They're not just instruments in this story, they're the battlefield, the weapon, the prison, and the escape all rolled into one. The drum kit becomes the central symbol of Andrew's entire existence, almost like a physical extension of his ambition. Every time he plays, it's like he's fighting for his soul, and those relentless drum solos feel less like music, and more like the sound of someone hammering away at the walls of their own limits, trying desperately to break through. Then there's the blood. Oh yes, the blood. You can't talk about Whiplash without picturing Andrew's shredded hands, and the crimson stains splattered across the drum kit. It's impossible to miss, and that's the point. The blood isn't just a visual, it's a loud, screaming metaphor for sacrifice. It's the film's way of saying, here's the price of greatness, and it's not pretty. In most films, the blood would symbolize defeat, a cue to stop. In Whiplash, the blood is almost like a trophy, a brutal badge of progress. The more he bleeds, the closer he feels to becoming the legend he's chasing. The tempo itself is a sneaky metaphor running throughout the film. Fletcher is obsessed with timing, with perfect rhythm, and it's not just about music, it's about control. Time in this film becomes a symbol of dominance. Fletcher controls the room by controlling the tempo, and when Andrew starts to master the tempo, that's when the power dynamic begins to shift. The constant battle over timing isn't just a musical fight. It's a war over who holds control, who leads, who gets to decide the pace of success. The quiet, almost unnoticed scenes with Andrew's father are like emotional counterweights, and they're packed with symbolic significance. His dad is always there with a soft, unimposing presence, usually holding out snacks or quietly supporting Andrew in his small, gentle way. The father isn't flashy, he isn't aggressive, and that's the point. He represents the life Andrew is slowly rejecting, a life of kindness, balance, and maybe even mediocrity. There's this constant, unspoken choice hanging over Andrew: the safe, loving world of his father or the brutal, punishing climb toward Fletcher's version of greatness. The peanut M / his dad offers become a tiny but powerful symbol of comfort, a soft life that Andrew ultimately turns away from in his quest for something more dangerous. Mirrors play a quiet but powerful role in the film too. There are moments where Andrew stares into the mirror with this fierce intensity, and you can see the shifting self-image, the internal battle raging inside him. The mirror isn't just there to show him, it's there to question who he's becoming. Is he still Andrew Neiman, the ambitious student, or is he morphing into Fletcher's creation? The mirror keeps asking that question without saying a word. And then there's Fletcher's famous line about Charlie Parker and the two most damaging words in the English language: good job. It's not just a provocative idea, it's a thesis statement, a symbol for the film's entire philosophy. It's a warning, a prophecy, and a justification all rolled into one. Fletcher wields this belief like a weapon, shaping his every action, and it becomes the haunting mantra that drives Andrew to push beyond human limits. The final performance itself is a metaphor on fire. That ending isn't just a drum solo, it's Andrew's rebellion, his self-destruction, his victory, his surrender. It's all of it packed into one explosive, sweaty, mind-bending sequence. It's as if the entire film has been building to this symbolic showdown, where Andrew finally speaks the only language Fletcher respects: perfection through pain. The symbols and metaphors in Whiplash don't just decorate the film. They drive it, elevate it, and give it that lingering weight that keeps it spinning in your head long after the credits roll. Every detail, from the band room chairs to the clinking sound of a drumstick dropping, seems to hum with hidden meaning, waiting for the audience to find it. The beauty of Whiplash is that it's a film you can watch again and again, and each time, the cymbals hit you a little differently. Sometimes like a whisper, sometimes like a crash cymbal. Whiplash isn't part of a franchise. It doesn't have sequels, spin-offs, or an extended cinematic universe. And that's actually part of what makes it so powerful. It stands alone like this bold, ferocious burst of cinematic energy that doesn't need anything before it or after it to justify its existence. It's a self-contained story that hits you with the intensity of a freight train and then walks off, leaving you breathless. But just because it isn't part of a franchise doesn't mean it floats in a vacuum. Oh no, Whiplash is plugged deep into a historical and cultural backdrop, especially when it comes to jazz music, the mythology of musical genius, and the centuries-old debate about what it really takes to achieve greatness. Let's talk about the jazz world that Whiplash dives into, because it's not just a random setting, it's a calculated, living part of the story. The film's heart beats in rhythm with jazz history, where legends like Buddy Rich and Charlie Parker became icons not just because they played well, but because they pushed the very edge of human capability. The film pulls from this high-pressure tradition where excellence is non-negotiable, where perfection isn't just expected, it's demanded no matter the cost. Damien Chazelle builds his story in the shadow of these real-life giants, and you can feel that lineage pressing down on Andrew's shoulders every time he sits at his drum kit. It's not just about impressing Fletcher. It's about measuring up to ghosts of the past, about chasing the unreachable legends who came before. And what's fascinating is that Chazelle isn't interested in giving us the polished, romanticized version of jazz you might find in more sentimental films. He's not here for the smooth, smoky clubs where everyone snaps their fingers and drinks martinis while nodding along to a sweet saxophone solo. He's diving headfirst into the brutal side of the genre. The relentless competition, the impossible tempos, the vicious, cutthroat energy where one wrong note can cost you your place. It's like he ripped away the velvet curtain and showed us the blood and sweat behind the shine. This isn't jazz as background music. This is jazz as war. Historically, the film feels authentic in its obsession with the grueling rehearsal process. Stories from the jazz world, whether it's legends of Buddy Rich cursing out his band, or tales of Charlie Parker's infamous high-pressure jam sessions, are packed with the kind of intensity Whiplash showcases. Chazelle seems to borrow the spirit of those stories and crank it up to 11, crafting a world where the stakes are as high as life and death, even though they're technically just playing music. The fact that he chose a competitive conservatory as the setting places the film right inside a real historical system where young musicians are often put through the ringer, where the demand for perfection is not just artistic, but institutional. And while Whiplash isn't directly about a historical figure, it taps into the long-standing cultural mythos of the tortured genius. It rides the same wave as stories about Beethoven, Picasso, Michael Jordan, people who were believed to be transcendent not because they were balanced, but because they were singularly obsessed. It takes this trope and forces the audience to stare directly at it, to wrestle with it. Is greatness worth the suffering? Is the pain part of the formula, or could there be another way? Whiplash doesn't answer these questions. It just throws them at you like cymbals hurled across a rehearsal room. And for Damien Chazelle, who would later go on to make La La Land and Babylon, Whiplash sits as this ferocious cornerstone in his filmography. It's his early declaration of war against easy, comfortable storytelling. In the larger history of films about music, Whiplash feels like a seismic jolt. It's not about the glamour of the stage, it's about the brutal road to get there. It lives in the same historical conversation as Amadeus and Bird, but brings its own razor-sharp, sweat-soaked flavor to the table. So even though it's not a historical biopic or part of a sprawling cinematic saga, Whiplash carves out its own space in film history by challenging how we think about music, ambition, and the dangerous cost of chasing perfection. Whiplash is one of those rare cinematic underdog stories where the film's budget was as lean as its story was intense. This wasn't a big studio monster packed with massive explosions, A-list salaries, and sprawling locations. No, Whiplash was made with a modest budget of around $3.3 million, which in Hollywood terms is practically a pocketful of spare change. But here's where the magic kicks in. Every single dollar feels like it went straight onto the screen. The film doesn't rely on fancy sets, extravagant costumes, or visual effects that burn cash like a wildfire. Instead, it strips everything down to the essentials: a few key locations, a small but fiercely talented cast, and a relentless drumbeat that grabs you by the collar and refuses to let go. It's almost as if the tight budget forced Damien Chazelle and his team to sharpen every element, to make sure each frame counted, and every shot punched above its financial weight. But what's really fascinating is that Whiplash didn't just squeak by. It absolutely blew past expectations at the box office. Starting its journey as an indie film that premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, it drummed up massive buzz right out of the gate. Whispers of its electric energy, powerhouse performances, and nerve-shredding intensity spread like wildfire, and suddenly everyone wanted to see this little movie about a kid and his drum kit. Against its modest budget, Whiplash pulled in over $49 million worldwide. A staggering return for such a tightly budgeted project. That's not just a win, that's a full-blown cinematic victory lap. And let's talk about the marketing, because it didn't need over-the-top campaigns with blockbuster trailers and endless posters plastered across every bus stop. The film marketed itself through word of mouth, festival praise, and the raw magnetism of J.K. Simmons' towering performance. Simmons' buzz alone became the film's secret weapon. Audiences were lining up to see what all the yelling was about, and they weren't disappointed. The Oscar talk supercharged the film's popularity even more. Suddenly, Whiplash wasn't just an indie film. It was an event. It was a conversation. It was a must-see. What's even more impressive is how Whiplash shows that you don't need a mountain of money to create something unforgettable. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about sweat, sound, rhythm, and raw emotion. The film used its budget with laser precision, focusing on tight editing, intense close-ups, and that thrilling, claustrophobic energy that made audiences feel like they were right there in the rehearsal room, ducking imaginary flying chairs. In a world where box office often feels like a battle of who can spend the most, Whiplash marched in with a humble budget, a cymbal crash, and a defiant shout. Less can be more, and sometimes, less can absolutely blow the roof off the theater. If you're ready to dive headfirst into the intense, nerve-wracking world of Whiplash, you're probably wondering where you can actually catch this adrenaline-fueled ride. Well, this isn't one of those films you'll likely stumble across on the big screen anymore unless you're lucky enough to catch a special film festival, a classic movie rescreening, or maybe a jazz-themed cinema event. But fear not, because Whiplash has comfortably made its way into the digital world where it's ready to crash cymbals and shatter expectations in your own living room. You can find Whiplash on various popular streaming platforms, and it regularly makes its rounds on subscription services where it sometimes pops up like a golden ticket. Keep your eyes peeled on big players like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and Hulu because the film occasionally rotates through their catalogs. But if you're in a hurry and you want that Fletcher-level immediacy, the digital rental route is your best bet. Platforms like Amazon, YouTube Movies, Google Play, and Apple TV usually have it ready for rent or purchase with just a click. And trust me, this is a film that deserves to be watched in the best quality you can find. The sound design is so razor-sharp that you'll want to crank up those speakers or pop on a killer pair of headphones to really feel every drumbeat, every tension-soaked silence, and every barked insult flying across the room. Watching it on a phone might technically work, but you'd be robbing yourself of the punchy impact that this film was born to deliver. The best seat? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere where you can feel your heart sink with the rhythm. Somewhere you can clench your fists and lean forward as the pressure builds. Whether you catch it on a streaming platform, rent it online, or finally grab that physical Blu-ray that's been waiting in your cart, just make sure you give Whiplash the attention it demands. It's not just background noise. It's a front row, sweat-dripping, pulse-pounding experience, and the screen you choose will either bring you into that feverish drum solo, or leave you just tapping your foot from a distance.